Hello and welcome to the 21st Scouching Report for the 2020 NHL Draft. Today we're going to be looking at Sarnia Sting winger and I guess center Jacob Perreault, most recently ranked 17th amongst North American skaters by NHL Central Scouting. At his most basic, Jacob Perreault is an electrifying offensive talent coming out of the OHL this year. His team wasn't that great, and he was one of the more exciting and frustrating players for me to track this season, but that does not mean that there is not potential for Jacob Perreault to be one of the bigger steals in this year's draft, especially if he's available with some of the last picks in the first round. So if you've never seen a Scouching Report before, the way that we break down a prospect is we look at them in 5 separate categories: think, move, get, pass, and shoot. Within each one of these categories, we give them a number and a letter grade, where the number indicates the overall tier of talent that I saw across the 7 games that I tracked, and the letter indicates the overall consistency within that tier that I saw across those 7 games. First, we look at the think category, and I'm just going to get this right out of the way right off the bat. Jacob Perreault is a player that is marked by inconsistencies, whether it's shift by shift, game by game, even offensive zone versus neutral zone versus defensive zone. There are times of absolute brilliance when it comes to playmaking and moving pucks around the ice, especially when he decides to use his skill to put pucks where defenders are not. He anticipates play well, and he can manage to get himself to high danger areas both offensively when his team has the puck and defensively when he's away from the puck. He does show a tendency to be capable as a competent positional two-way player at the next level. He does show flashes of at least being competent in terms of positional play at both ends of the ice, but at the same time there is a lot of extreme frustration with Jacob Perreault, especially on defensive transitions. This is a player that I caught far too often not moving his feet well enough, not sticking to opponents in defensive transitions nearly enough, and simply floating aimlessly around the ice when his team did not have the puck. This was a player that did not play with a tremendous amount of purpose when his team did not have the puck, and especially so when his team did not have the puck outside of the offensive zone. But when Perreault applies himself on a shift-by-shift basis, in terms of pure talent, he might be amongst the top-level players in this entire draft. He shows a lot of aggression around the ice, both away and with the puck. He's willing to chase down loose pucks and beat other players in foot races from time to time, but again, this was just marked by a lot of inconsistencies. And while his team's talent level was not really on par with some other high-level prospects in this year's draft, I found he could try to do a little bit too much with the puck, which led to quite a lot of turnovers all around the ice, especially in the neutral zone. But Perreault also shows a lot of really nice skill and creativity with the puck, so I wouldn't really say that any of these things are a bad thing. I think he just needs more training and more time to learn how to pick his spots a little bit better, or at least bring his skill level and speed up to a point where he can really keep defenders on their heels. But at the most surface level, Jacob Perreault faced 90 shot attempts per 60 minutes when he was on the ice. Of anyone we've profiled so far, that is the most by 25%. And with all of that being considered, you would think that his team was facing a lot of defensive transitions where the opponent has the puck and coming towards them. But Jacob Perreault would only involve himself in 26 defensive transitions per 60 minutes in the games that I tracked. And even when he did get involved in these transitions, the opponent maintained control of the puck 64% of the time. That is the second worst metric I have measured so far amongst players I've profiled behind Noel Gunler. And all of this added up to him facing 37 dangerous shot attempts per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 in my games that I tracked. That is more shot attempts against per 60 minutes than both Lucas Raymond and Tim Stützle faced from anywhere on the ice. So to me, the data indicates that either Sarnia was hemmed in their own zone constantly every single game, or that Perreault just wasn't really involving himself in back checks a tremendous amount, or, to my eyes, it seemed like both were occurring. The defensive side is unequivocally where the vast majority of improvements in this category need to come for Jacob Perreault. So in the think category, I'm giving Perreault a 2D. Again, overall, it's all about inconsistency with Perreault. When he's fully engaged in play on a shift-by-shift basis and keeps his feet moving with or without the puck, he has a lot of potential to be a really, really good hockey player. There's creativity, there's intelligence, and at times there's aggressiveness. And I also noted that there was a few instances where he had a bit of pest-like behavior, doing these little things that might get under the opponent's skin, which I don't really think is a bad thing. And he does have the skating ability to at least apply a little bit of defensive pressure more often. So all of these things are where I think I would look for more from him over the next couple of years. Next, we go to the move category, and I'm going to start with the word that is going to come up time and time time again in this video. Inconsistency. At his best, there's tremendous skill and a really good separation gear. When Jacob Perreault keeps his feet and hands moving, he can be a really hard player to stop. He's also surprisingly resilient on his feet with the puck on his own stick. His skating can look a little bit awkward at times, but the floor of talent to me is really high, and I think mechanics are something that you can tweak over time. And when he keeps his feet moving, he can be a pretty hard player to stop with his multitude of talents, including this example against notable top-end draft prospect Jamie Drysdale. I will say that he could do a little bit better to improve his first few steps and really explode from a standing start. If he has time to wind up, he can really hit a top speed that was about average for some top-end prospects in this year's draft, as he went blue line to blue line in 1.76 seconds. And allowing those increases in speed to work in conjunction with his good skill with his hands could make him a really dangerous player with the puck, even more so than he is today. And he's also pretty smart with how he uses his body to spin off of defenders and move pucks to teammates or create more space for himself. And he did manage to maintain control of the puck in 64% of his offensive transitions, but his number of offensive transitions in which he maintained control of the puck was about average. And as the team around him improves, hopefully over the next couple of years, he should have plenty of opportunities to increase the total number of offensive transitions he's trying to generate. This isn't a player that I found to be dumping the puck around the ice a tremendous amount, but there were times that when he did choose to dump pucks, there was a lot of open ice in front of him, and I really believed that using his feet and his hands more could have really maintained possession of the puck a lot easier. He can skate himself into trouble a little bit and try to rely on his skill too much. It might have felt that he needed to put the risk on his shoulders because not many other players had the talent to do so. But this is a player who will go as far as his feet and his hands working together will take him. So in the move category, I'm giving Perreault a 1F. There's a ton of potential here. In terms of his skill and some speed that he shows from time to time, he's right up there with some very talented players in this year's draft class. But he absolutely needs to improve his consistency here. His resiliency with the puck was good some of the time. His willingness to keep up with opposing teams in a rush offense was sometimes there, but not there nearly enough. He wasn't moving his feet in the defensive end and really closing down gaps very effectively too often, and far too often he seemed unwilling to tie up opponents in open ice in the defensive zone especially. This is a player with a ton of potential, but does have some lessons to learn if he's going to unlock the full scope of that potential. Next we go to the get category, and yes, the Sarnia Sting were not good, but with Jacob Perreault on the ice, over the course of the full season, Sarnia was giving up 4.5 even strength goals against per 60 minutes. That is an inexcusably high number that is not going to help your team win very many games. And in my tracking at just 5-on-5 across 7 games, that number went up to 5.66 goals against per 60. Again, not good enough. And that goes doubly for Perreault if he wants to be a center. In my opinion, I want my centers to be defensively responsible, keep their feet moving in their own end, and understand that in order to create offensive transitions and create offensive chances, you first need to break pucks out of your own zone. And with Perreault, I saw far too many red flags in this area of the game that leads me to believe that he is very focused on playing with the puck on his own stick and generating offense. But it's not all bad here. Again, he has the talent to be aggressive in the defensive end, and he has these pest-like tendencies that I think should be leveraged moving forward. He can shadow opponents really well, and he can knock down pucks in transition well with his stick, but he absolutely needs to keep his feet moving and be more aggressive in the defensive end. He was losing track of opponents, he would pursue players for a while and then just spin off without even applying any pressure, and it just felt that he lacked intensity to the point that he was a step behind a lot of the time in the defensive end. He shows a lot of talent, and there were instances where I found that he was a competent defensive player, but it was really marked by inconsistency. If he's willing to play a little bit more physical, use his feet to his advantage, use his stick to his advantage more often, and just focus on applying pressure a little bit more, he could be at least a competent defensive player, which should allow him to play a more offensive role. In the get category, I'm giving Perreault a 2F. Part of me wanted to put him even lower in this category, but I do think that the talent that he has will take him at least to a certain point that will make him a decent defensive player. But right now, I felt that he was a big part of why Sarnia had a hard time keeping shots away from their own goaltender. Okay, now we get to the fun part. In the pass category, Jacob Perreault really turns his game around, in my opinion. He can be an absolutely magical player with a great eye for line mates and a ton of creativity when the puck is on his own stick. He can be creative, but sometimes a little bit too creative and fancy, doing behind-the-back passes, spin passes to spin off of opposing defenders, but I did find that most of the time when he did those things, the situation did call for a little bit of creativity to move pucks into open space. But completing 62.7% of your passes is really not that ideal, especially if you want to be a center down the road. But with 27.7% of his attempts being dangerous attempts, that's among the higher measures that I've tracked all year, and it really shows his very, very offensive focus. 16.4 dangerous passes per 60 minutes puts him second in my tracking behind Jean-Luc Foudy. And that measure of 16.4 also puts him well ahead of third place, which was Alexander Pashin. And for all the negative talk about play in his own end, he still drove 3.78 5-on-5 goals for per 60 minutes when I tracked him. This is a player who simply knows how to generate offense in the offensive zone, even at 5-on-5, which is something that I really value. He can be a little bit careless with his decision-making ability breaking pucks out of his own end especially, but this is a player where I felt that a lot of his incomplete passes weren't really his own fault. But you do need your high-octane offensive players to be able to complete passes at a better rate than what Perreault is registering. So in the pass category, I'm giving Perreault a 1D. I feel like Perreault is one of the more creative and exciting offensive passers in this year's draft. And with all the video and data evidence presented, I think Perreault could be a really creative offensive winger at the next level at the very least. And if you know that when you play Perreault, there will be some known defensive issues, even if the current issues are worked out to a certain point, I still think that the pros with Perreault will outweigh the cons, especially when it comes to passing the puck around the ice in the offensive zone. Finally, we look at the shoot category, and with Perreault, this is another area that is a major, major positive. 39 goals in 57 games does not come easy. 17% of Sarnia's goals on average came off of Jacob Perreault's stick. That is an extremely notable metric, and Perreault was not a person who could only score on the power play either. And his offensive threat metric of 23.9 puts him about on par with Lukas Reichel, another player who had some very good shooting metrics behind him, but did not have the passing metrics that someone like Jacob Perreault had. And that measure of 23.9 put Perreault at 5th among all profiled players in this video series thus far. However, just 40% of his attempts were dangerous. This is a player who very clearly likes to shoot the puck a lot from all over the offensive end. But he does have the skill and resiliency and speed to at least push into those dangerous areas from time to time, and I would like to see more of those low danger chances that he loves to take so much be pushed at least into medium danger a little more often. So in the shoot category, I'm giving Jacob Perreault a 1C. In terms of the quality of shot, it's ridiculous. If there is any other player not named Alexander Holtz that I want shooting from anywhere in the offensive end, it's probably Jacob Perreault. He has a ridiculous ability to place pucks where goalies are not, no matter how tight the space might be. So the way that we wrap up these reports is we look at the best part of a player's game, the good part of a player's game, and the not so good part of a player's game. The best part of Jacob Perreault's game to me is his shot. It is ridiculously good. It's quick, and it really seems like when he sees a small space and scores in that small space, he meant to do so. And in just the 7 games that I tracked, there were multiple instances of Jacob Perreault taking really low chance shots on small areas that goalies had left open, and it really felt like he meant to do all of these things and put the puck in those locations. And he can also do it on the forehand and backhand. This is a player that can come at you in a multitude of ways, and if things work out, he should spook opponents just on the quality of his shot alone. The good part of his game is the other side of the offensive coin. His creativity and passing ability in the offensive zone is really, really enticing. Just when you think he might be swinging wide and looking for an opportunity along the boards high in the offensive zone, he'll send passes right out in front of the net without you even really noticing. And at times he can forecheck hard and turn play around really quickly and put pucks to dangerous areas. So if he can just focus a little bit more outside of the offensive zone and make sure his passes get to their targets, as well as use that creativity to spin off of opponents and move pucks to teammates to generate more breakouts, there could be a really interesting and creative player all around the ice with passing the puck. So in my opinion, he has the potential to be a really good quarterback when he's out there on the ice. But his overall skill set, both passing and shooting, is a really nice floor of talent to work around. The not so good part should be obvious by this point. In my opinion, Perreault has the talent to at least be competent in his own end. And that hard-working, shift-by-shift mentality just doesn't seem to be there right now. Far Far too often, Jacob Perreault could float defensively, abandon applying pressure to forecheckers before he even physically encounters them, not extending his stick enough to block passing lanes when pucks are in transition, and simply losing track of opponents in the defensive end, prolonging offensive cycles were all real issues that I saw time and time again with Perreault. And when it comes to involving yourself in defensive transitions, I need my centers to be involved in those defensive transitions about as much as they can. That area of the game to me for projecting a center is important, but even when Perreault did get involved, his opponent maintained control of the puck 2/3 of the time. Those metrics put together just to me are not good enough, but keeping his feet moving more often, building on his explosivity to have a better first few steps, and being more physically assertive and using that pest-like tendency he showed from time to time should at least make him a more competent defensive player so he can showcase his offense more often. So overall, I'm giving Jacob Perreault a 1F. He is one of the more frustrating players that I had to track this year so far, but only frustrating because I love what he's capable of so much. If he can bring a consistency in his intensity level, especially away from the puck more often, there could be a really interesting dynamic offensive player here. He's creative and dangerous with his passing, his shot is insanely good, but at the next level he won't get the chance to use it very much if his defensive game does not improve to at least a level that a coach can trust. But if you want to develop Perreault into a purely offensive-minded winger with known defensive issues that you're aware of, I'm totally okay with that, and I think he could be one of the better ones to come out of this year's draft. But I'll close with this. I don't think there's that many players that are as dangerous with the puck on their stick in this year's draft as Jacob Perreault. And especially considering the quality of team around him. He really is able to cook up a delicious meal in the offensive zone, whether it's through his passing or his shooting. It felt like sometimes his teammates just were not there to finish those plays, and I do think that over time, if his defensive floor can increase, his offensive potential will increase as well. It'll really boil down to his willingness to keep his feet moving and be engaged when away from the puck to at least be competent. He has flashes of being a player that can get under the opponent's skin, but while also being able to generate a tremendous amount of offense off of his own stick. I think he's going to be a no-nonsense, all-out offensive player in the National Hockey League, but I don't think he's going to get there unless his explosivity and play away from the puck get to a point where he can really do what he can to shut down defensive cycles. So that's all for this Scouching Report. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, you can click all the buttons you see below me so you never miss another one. If you really liked it, you could subscribe on Patreon, where you get access to data sheets for drafted and undrafted prospects, exclusive data visualizations, a Discord server, and plenty of other goodies. Or you could pick up some merchandise from the Scouchwear shop, where 50% of all profits go to the Women's Sports Foundation. So that's all, and thanks for watching.